All right, so I finished up session 2 and I just released it. So I wanted to follow up on something a little bit more in detail. So you saw the clip. If you didn't, go back and watch it. It's session 2, but it was a continuation from session 1, which we kind of morphed in more and more. So there's a lot of things that I'll hear within the times that we do our groups and stuff that I will redirect or inquire later on. And there was two major things. Okay, number one is lying to ourselves. And as we started having these discussions, and it's been weeks that we keep talking about the same kind of thing as what do we define as commitment, and then it morphed into we lie to ourselves, and then this storyline that we tell ourselves so we can feel somewhat safe in our environment or to handle life in reality. And the theme keeps changing to we're more avoidant of what is reality. We're avoidant of life. But a lot of it is because there's a strong lines between concrete thinkers and abstract. So there's an age around 9, 10 when boys start their puberty is starting to kick in. Girls are finishing up at that time. And as that happens, they start having more thoughts of a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional life. It's not just the one way or the other, truth, black, white, um, bad, good. It's, oh, is there variations? There's the grays, right? Is there another hypotheticals? Is there another reasons we could do this? But at this time, also, there's a lot of hormones. So developmentally, they're kind of growing, evolving. And as that grows, there's also more responsibilities, and then the responsibilities, but then they're still viewed as young. So a lot of times we have these conversations because they're still treated in a lot of aspects as children, identified society wise. You're a child, you're a minor, but then their expectations since they were probably 8 years old, and a lot of them that I see is about 8 7 8 years old, they are the parent, they are raising themselves. And so then there's a lot of dissonance and fights within societies is because the kids are like, I've been raising myself this whole time, I'm taking care of my parents. And for the one that you saw in here, she basically has been raising herself. She is the youngest and she is raising herself. And so then when she has to parent her parent, um, and then she's told she can't because she's a minor, then it's almost as well, screw you, you're going to walk away from me anyway, so I'm going to end up stepping up and doing it anyways. Because all the time when somebody comes in or an agency comes in, they stay temporarily, they make it worse, then they leave, and then I'm held holding the bag because nobody else is going to change because they're not held up to a different standards, they're adults. um, and mind you, like a lot of the youths that I work with are above achievers. Like they are taking college prep classes while they're dealing with this. So they're not just troublemakers that go in the system all the time. They literally are AP college credited. They have got 3 to 4 credits before even graduating high school, in college. So I'm not dealing with just the run of the mill. I also have some of those that are just regular average students that I just doing what I'm required to do. I'm not over in it and I'm not under in it. And then I have those that are just, dude, they've given up. They're like, what's the point? So what I wanted to talk about is the Erikson 8 stages, because that is something that I pinned on back then was Eric's 8 stages. And so um, a lot of times this one in particularly is she's been raising her mom. There's been a lot of dysfunction, drugs, addiction, family systemic. So that's how it works. Is systemics works where mom and dad have a kid, and that kid ends up paying the price for their family's um, baggage. And so often I find that now Erikson had coined it where if you basically don't have, or Ainsworth attachment theories, basic trust, mistrust is some of the first things when you first attachment. And then you'll go to autonomy and shame. And this is usually where most people will end up stopping and they get stuck is the autonomy and shame. Are you secure in yourself? Are you okay? Do people shame you because, and it's also part of conformity. So we use that as a conformity too. Follow the basic rules to live in our society, live in our home, right? There's covert rules. Those are those hidden rules that you know that you don't say certain things because we may get slapped. Then you go into initiative and guilt. And so this is initiative where I step out, and that's usually where I am right now in the teen years. And Most times they call them the terrible twos. I call them the independent threes because they're rising up to the 3 year olds. And so they're trying to be more autonomy. And that's usually where the shame gets in. Stop it. Don't be older. Don't grow up. Don't grow up. And so then they get stuck. Well, then you get the initiative and guilt where they're back at this teen years old. I want to go off and do my own thing. I think that there's another way to do that work instead of the way that you tell me I have to do A, B, C, D, E. I think that I can do it this way. And so then there's a guilt. So there's a guilt trip of, are you, and this is where it goes, the triangulation. The guilt trip is, are you aligning with them against me? And so then you feel, I have to align back with you, because if not, then you're going to alienate me. And then it comes into industry and inferiority, where this is a confidence being productive of your self-confidence, where you actually break away. And that's usually around that, where I'm dealing with now, 17, 18, 19, 20s, about going around 25 years old. They're starting to really just rebuck back, like almost rebel, saying enough. However, if they have been manipulated enough by one of the family parents to stick in the guilt phase and manipulation of this, they owe it to their parent to take care of them, they will be stuck there, and they will never get to that next phase of growing into this inferiority. And then the adolescence phase will come into the role confusion. And that's where we're dealing with Will, as well as this role confusion. You also see it in the gender identity, but then sexual partners. And then how do I have effective, healthy relationships when my family's doing this? And so then they start really identifying, what are my freaking values? Do I have to take that? And then they keep going back and forth to other different initiatives. Guilt, industrial inferiority. Am I going to be the little rebel 12-year-old, 13-year-old? Am I going to move up to role confusion? Again, if they get stuck or been convinced that they owe it, and they get manipulated as your value is, you need to be honoring our family, ours first. You do what we do what I tell you. And this is where the young adult, intimate in isolation, they'll either seek out relationships that either perpetually keep this cycle going because it's normality, or they'll look for healthy environments and not understand that environment. And so it'd be isolating and then intimate, and isolating and intimate. And that's where you'll see a lot of dysfunctional relationships, is because they are navigating. We naturally navigate to healthy, except that once you engage into a healthy relationship, you can only handle it for so long, because your system is set up for an abuse cycle of power and control. It's used to certain patterns at certain times, certain seasons, because that's what you were raised in. There's always a cycle to the dysfunction, or to the patterns of relationships, or the pattern of happiness. It doesn't have to be just dysfunction, because during the holiday times, maybe in your family, you had this huge parties and everybody loved it and everybody's excited and they had this. So your body's already prepping for that in probably October, like the excitement, my birthday's coming up, or Christmas is coming up. And so then you get that excitement. And then when you have it, it's like a release, right? Well, the same thing can happen to an abuser as well. Is the abuse cycle, mentally or physically, is they're like, okay, something comes up, because it always comes up around this time of year. And then once the explosion goes, they go into like this deep release and relaxation, peace, and then it goes to a honeymoon phase. That's what they call the honeymoon phase. The same thing can happen to a positive relationship as well. So people will naturally migrate to an unhealthy one, but then will become very uncomfortable, because it's not the norm of a release. The release and the climax is the difference between staying engaged in that for long periods or not. And the only way that you can stay into a long, healthy relationship for a long time is if you recognize that what you had was not as healthy, and that you have to release it. Your parents, whatever, they're going to do whatever. Their aunts, uncles, they don't have to release it. You do. That's the only way that you'll stay engaged into a healthy relationship. And then as you do that, you'll be more of an intimate person. You speak from your heart. And that's usually because the confound that I usually have is because I speak to my heart. And so it takes me a while to convert the language into thoughts. And so if people spoke more from their heart, we probably would have more intimacy, but we get so locked into our thoughts and judgments and the shame and the doubt, which is way back in our toddler years. And once you get fixated fixated on that, trying to be better, or daddy's girl, or mommy's favorite daughter, that they like this. Well, they like that for them because that's how they would design themselves, not how you design yourselves. And so then part of the process is we recognize that each is our own, but how do we recognize what is a judgment and what is discernment when it comes to our emotions? And the only way you can do that is you have to speak from your heart. And then, of course, we go into the middle adulthood and old, and you can see that some of the parents that I'm dealing with, they've never, even though their age is middle adulthood, they actually are still in their adolescent phase, still trying to figure out their intimacy, their identity, their confusion, role reversal, especially this person's mom. I mean, you're dating somebody 30 years younger. That means you got fixated in your high school years, and you somewhere in there, you never gained the strength to be who you were. And so Erikson, 8 stages, you can look it up. You can see where you are. There is nothing that is left in concrete. There's always the gray, so you can always change yourself. And recognizing first and foremost, what you feel can be put into words with a picture, but you need to check the environment to make sure that that is accurate in reflection of what you are feeling. And when I say that is, for example, if you are sitting in a room, be observing, is this pleasing or unpleasing? And if it's unpleasing, then maybe it doesn't vibe with you right now. If it's pleasing, then you want to look at it. And it's not a sexual term. I mean, yes, that can be used as sexual, but our neurons and our cells are based off of an energetic release. They fire based on energy. But that energy gives off a vibration. And that vibration can either soothe us, which is pleasing, or stab us, which is unpleasing. And that's what I'm talking about. And as we morph into another, we're going to continue this conversation with them, and we're going to talk more about avoidance. But avoidance wraps into being left in a transitions psycho stage. I mean, we're in psychosocial developmental stage where you're stuck in one phase, even though your age is something else, you're cognitively still stuck. All right. Well, thank you for coming again. Like I said, I wanted to clear up the 8 stages plus attachment, because it was all kind of go into attachment style. I may talk a little bit more on disorganized, but I'd rather do that with the students this next week. All right. Have a blessed holiday. I guess it's a holiday weekend. I don't know. And do something for you and speak from your heart.